Hello everybody, welcome to Stonx Music. My name is Ollie and today we're going to be having a look at channel EQ in this deep dive session. Let's go! Okay, here we are back in Ableton's manual. Let's have a look at channel EQ. Inspired by EQs found on classic mixing desks, channel EQ is a simple yet flexible 3-band EQ, fine-tuned to provide musical results for a variety of audio material. Activating the high-pass 80Hz switch will toggle a high-pass filter, which is used for removing the rumble from a signal. The low parameter controls the gain of a low-shelf filter tuned to 100Hz. This filter can boost or attenuate low frequencies by a range of plus or minus 15 decibels. The filter curve is adaptive and will change dynamically relative to the amount of gain applied. The mid parameter controls the gain of a sweepable bell filter. Unlike the low and high parameters, mid has a range of plus or minus 12 decibels. The frequency slider located above the mid control allows you to set the center frequency of this filter from 120 Hz to 7.5 kHz. When boosting, the high parameter controls the gain of a high shelf filter up to 15 decibels. When attenuating, the shelving filter is combined with a low pass filter. Turning the parameter from 0 decibels towards minus 15 decibels will simultaneously reduce the cutoff frequency of the low pass filter from 20 kHz to 8 kHz. A spectrum visualization provides real-time visual feedback of the resulting filter curves and processed signal. The output control sets the amount of gain applied to the processed signal and can be used to compensate for any changed signal amplitude resulting from the EQ settings. Channel EQ tips. You can use the channel EQ to further shape the output of a reverb effect in a device chain. You can also shape the sound of a single drum or an entire drum kit by placing an instance of channel EQ onto one or multiple drum rack pads. Adding an instance of saturator after channel EQ in a device chain allows you to simulate the analog non-linearities of a mixer channel strip. In such cases, boosting the low end considerably would also lead to increased distortion, similar to the behaviour of analog mixing desks. So a nice little short one here. It's basically a dirty 3-band EQ. So let's jump in, do some tests and see what we get. So here are our results. Let me just jump into Ableton quickly and show you the sound we started with. It is a sample of a bungee cord, which I've pulled into sampler, done a little bit of FM synthesis, a little bit of pitch envelope, and a little bit of distortion with our filters. So we've got this, let's have a listen. So you can see, because of the FM, over time it gets a little spikier, a little more of those frequencies come through. So let's have a look at our results. So we start with it off. When we turn it on, there doesn't seem to be too much discernible change. A few of these spikes could just be our FM synthesis. Let's have a look at the low boost. So this is without the shelf mode engaged. And it seems to be doing what it says it's doing, just above 100 Hz, 150 Hz. Seems to be the affected area. You can see maybe it does go up to the 200 region. Just under 300 here. This frequency is being boosted a good bit, which probably is what it says it's doing. That's not too bad. The low cut. So the cutting seems to be doing a lot more than the boosting. That definitely looks like it's shaving off more decibels than the boost is adding. Next up is the low boost with the slope. We can see here pretty similar, a bit more control on the bottom because it slopes up even as you're boosting. And the low cut Same again, I'd say that's going up to maybe 200, 300 Hertz is being affected, which is what you'd expect. Next up is our mid cut, and this is with it set at its standard 1.5 kilohertz. That's what it comes with as default. So that's a bell curve cut, and it seems to be quite good. 1.5 kilohertz is majorly affected. It does, as it says there, look, it goes quite a way down and quite a way up. Say 400. Yeah, 400, 300, 400, up to, well, 3K doesn't seem to be too affected. But we're definitely losing some around here, so up to roughly 7K. Mid boost, same thing, we've got it set at 1.5 kilohertz. And it definitely doesn't seem to be as harsh, so boosting with channel EQ does not look like it does anywhere near as much as cutting. Next up we've got the high cut. So that looks pretty good. Same thing that we had with auto filter. There are frequencies left behind. This is not a brick wall cutting off everything above. It's reducing the decibels per frequency as it goes down. Does quite a good job though. You can see everything above 6, 7K definitely affected. So down to 3K you can see less affected there. So everything above 3K, which is probably what that says there roughly. That looks like around 3K is being affected. The boost, again same, you can see just below the 3K, maybe towards the 2K is where it's affecting from. And much less. The boost, even when crammed all the way to the top, which should be, is it 15 decibels? It does appear to be affecting it much less than the cut. Next we have the mid cut, the lowest, so that's taking it all the way down to, what is this, 150 Hertz, 120 Hertz? So that's definitely affecting around 40, 60. Up to 300, 400, you guys say? I mean, even as high as 500 up here looks like it's affected slightly. And next up is the mid cut at its highest point, which is taking it right up to, where do we say that is? 7.5K. So if we look here, 7.5. And it's not doing a very good job actually at all up there. It's really not cutting out much of these frequencies. We had this dip here already at the 7K. And it's made it slightly bigger. Really not done much to affect those. Next up, the mid boost at its lowest. So that's down at the 120 Hertz again. And as expected, the boost isn't doing as much as the cut. But you can definitely see here around the 100 Hertz that is being boosted a good amount, with quite a gentle ramp off to 400, 500 Hertz. 500 Hertz isn't really that affected. And lastly, mid boost at its highest point, which is again at the 7.5 kilohertz. And that's definitely pulling a lot of this up. From 3K all the way up, I'd say, is being affected. 10K there. And it's getting rid of that good scoop that was taken out of the sound originally. That's boosting quite a lot there. So let's jump into Ableton and have a little look at what we can do with this. So what would we use channel EQ for? Well, from my research and from reading the manual, it seems to me that this is more trying to emulate your hardware mixing desk. So if you have a drum beat or one of these basses that I'm making, and you've got your big notes, and you want to EQ that sound to do whatever you want to do with it, I would probably recommend still using EQ8 or whatever other EQs you use. You can get in there, really dial in your cues, got mid-side mode, you know, doing whatever it is you want to do. I don't think channel EQ is going to replicate that. What channel EQ seems to be good for, and what the manual was saying, was doing a big dirty piece of work. So let's say we've got our reverb after this bass. So let's have a little listen. You've got your input processing here, which does make a big difference on the sound. But afterwards, let's say I just want to get rid of all of the bass in that reverb. We can put the shelf on or leave it off. Let's leave it off. Take that all the way down. So let's listen now. So what I'd be tempted to do here, let's group these two together. Call this one our wet channel. Create a chain, call that one our dry channel. Move the dry above. Turn this wet all the way up on the reverb, so we have our dry and our wet. I don't know why, but I always do -6 whenever I'm grouping these, just for kind of headroom and stop things clipping. So let's turn this off and imagine that we've got our reverb here. If I open up span, there's some of that low end there that we might not want. So let's get the channel EQ, turn that on. Maybe boost the high a bit. And then you can balance your levels accordingly. Without the EQ, that's just muddying everything up. So getting rid of those muddy frequencies, adding some of those high frequencies in. This is something you could be doing with EQ8 or EQ3, for instance. I never use channel EQ. I've never used it. It's just not got enough control for me. But that's what they said in the manual to use it for. It seems to be fit for purpose there. So let's have a look at some drums. I've got these wonky drums here. Let's have a quick listen. So let's do the same thing. Let's get here. I'm going to grab a saturator and we're going to put it to wave shape mode, draw some nasty curve in, 6 up, output 6 down. Gives you all that horrible crunch and bite. Let's group it. Call this one wet, new chain, dry. Oops. Turn them both down to 6 because I don't know why. So we've got a dry. So we probably don't want all of that low end in the distorted one. So let's do the same again. We'll try slope this time. Let's try the other one. So the slope seems to get rid of a bit more because it continues down, whereas this is ending here, you can see. So we'll leave slope on, just try and tidy it up a bit more. Let's have a listen to them together. Turn the wet off, the original, without the channel EQ. So let's have a quick look and just a little comparison. Open up span, come back to this channel. What is the difference between using our auto filter and using the channel EQ? So that ends at about 100. There's the slope. Would you say it's a 12 or a 24? Let's go for 24. It ends by 100. Roughly that. So let's have a quick look here. Just solo this so we're only getting the distortion. And so you can definitely see the EQ, channel EQ is not as harsh. We still have some of that 100 coming through. do the auto filter. Picks a little. So the channel EQ is a more natural, you could say, EQ than using the auto filter, or possibly using the E3 band EQ. EQ3, let's have a quick look at the comparison. That's EQ8 in umpty. EQ3, let's have a quick look at the comparison. Take the gain all the way down for there. Frequency low. And the channel EQ. So the difference is with EQ3 we can actually turn it down all the way, whereas this is only -15. So let's set that to -15. So you can see when EQ3 is set to -15, we've got some of these 50 Hz frequencies coming through. Channel EQ seems to be sloping that down. Oh, they still pop through a little. And the auto filter is really the surgical one that's, by that 100, it's almost totally all gone. So what you choose to use out of these three is totally up to you and totally up to preference. I'd say any of you guys out there that are recording guitars, recording more live instruments, you're probably going to find channel EQ gives you more of that feel. If you're used to playing at a venue and having your sound guy at a desk, channel EQ is probably going to get you closer to that kind of sound, whereas the auto filter is really going to be precision cutting off. And as we saw last time, that doesn't always work. You can duplicate your auto filter to achieve that. And EQ3 has the benefit of being able to go down to -infinite. So you really can, same as auto filter, carve away at those frequencies. So that's pretty much it for channel EQ. It's a real simple one. If you want to have a look at some sound design, one of the things I like to do is just boost the heck out of frequencies. You can up the output as well. Let's grab a saturator like the manual said. So now as we start boosting, we should get more distortion happening. Let me just loop this. So let's try our mid down here. Let's right click, show automation for the movement amount, and we can draw something in here. Let's turn that grid off, press B and go la and have a little listen. And we can put a glue compressor after that to really smash it all together. Threshold down, makeup up, soft clip. Obviously I've not drawn the best automation in, I've just drawn something random. You could really go in and kind of hone this sound. So that's something I'd usually be doing with auto filter. You can use channel EQ for it if you want. I wouldn't really say that's its main purpose. So if we put our saturator afterwards, then boosting the amount is going to give us a bit more distortion. Like the manual said, more akin to an analog mixing desk. So have a little listen. If we turn the drive up a bit, let's turn the output down. See, it's getting real crispy at the top because it's pushing the highs into a saturator. Scoop the mids a bit if we want. Let's go down here. So a lot less control with the channel EQ, but a nice quick dirty one if you want to just change the sound slightly of something. Say if we've got, instead of all of our drums together here, if we had our drums in a bus in our group, had a bunch of audio tracks. So it works kind of okay as a group EQ. I would just say go ahead, use EQ8 all the time, or FabFilter, or whatever other EQ you're using. I don't see any point to not have the control. You can do exactly that on here. If you want to only have 3 bands turned on, you can turn 3 bands on. You can turn it to be whatever mode you want. So you have exactly the same flexibility and control on EQ8, and you have loads more. You have your left and right, or your mid side. You've got this scaling option. You have up to 8 bands. You can adjust your Q. So I don't really see the point in channel EQ unless you're coming from an analog desk. You're used to mixing bands live and you just want that quick kind of easy up or down at a certain frequency. Alright guys, that'll do it for today's episode of Deep Dive. As always, project files in the description. My main takeaway from this one, I don't really see the point in it, to be honest. EQ8, EQ3, they give you much more control on the Q. You've got mid-side mode, you've got all of that stuff. So channel EQ, maybe if you're coming from an analog background, maybe if you're used to recording bands at gigs and stuff, you might get on with it. I just don't think it gives me enough control, to be honest. But maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!